The bell above the door sounded entirely different this time. Or maybe my brain was just processing the world differently now. You were standing at the front counter when I walked in, but you didn't greet me. You just turned and walked toward the back workroom. I followed you through the narrow corridor, past the shelves of tools and spools of wax thread, into the small room where you did your serious work.
I didn't know what to do, Harold. I opened the lining to fix the slider and just look at the workbench. Look at what was underneath the bottom panel.
I looked. The burgundy bag was open, its lining turned back. A hidden compartment had been dismantled. On a clean square of brown paper, arranged with a care that told me you hadn't wanted to taint them, were 3 things I had not put there. 4 photographs, Diane and a man I did not recognize. Mid-40s dark jacket. They were walking through a hotel lobby. The images were clear. There was absolutely no ambiguity about what they documented.
There's more. Read the paper, Harold. Read what it says.
It was a single sheet of paper, folded in quarters, unfolded now in smooth flat. Typed in a clean, small font. 12 numbered steps under the heading Transition Plan. I read the first 3 lines and felt something cold settle behind my sternum. Step 4. Establish pattern of cognitive concerns with family physician. Minimum 60 days documentation. Step 9. Execute financial transfer authorization. Target completion, December 15th, 2025.
Read the handwritten note next to it.
I picked up a small square of notepaper, 2 lines, written in the same handwriting that had left me notes on the kitchen counter for 4 decades. Plan B stairs or meds, whichever comes first. I read everything twice. The room did not change. The lamp was still warm. The smell of leather was still in the air. I folded the notepaper back along its original crease.
Harold, your voice hasn't changed. Your face hasn't moved. Do you understand what you're looking at? You need to call the police right now. You cannot go home tonight.
I looked at the checklist and the photographs. I did the math without trying to. 9 weeks left on her timeline. I kept my voice completely even. Not yet.
Really? Not yet? Look at me, Harold. I just pulled a literal blueprint for your murder out of your wife's handbag. What exactly are you waiting for?
I'm thinking about what a single phone call to the police would produce at this exact moment. I have 4 photographs and a piece of paper. Diane would say the photographs were old, taken out of context. She would say the checklist was just a private journal entry, a worry list written by a frightened spouse. She would say the note was a misunderstanding, and she would say it calmly, with the quiet confidence of a woman who has spent considerable time preparing for exactly this scenario.
So you're just going to walk back into that house. You're going to sleep in the same bed as the woman who wrote stairs or meds on a sticky note.
Yes, because right now, anger is a luxury that requires safety, and I am not safe. If I confront her now, she'll find a way out. She'll adapt the system, so I am going to wait.
Wait for what? For her to push you down the stairs?
No, I'm going to wait until I have everything. I need physical evidence, financial proof, and an independent medical evaluation to prove her cognitive concern narrative is fiction. I need to identify her system, map the components, and find every point of failure. I'm going to build a counter system that is stronger, more precise, and completely invisible. I'm waiting until she doesn't have a single door left to walk out of.
You're a cooler man than I am, Harold.
I'm a careful man. There is a difference. I need you to photograph all of this onto a USB drive. Then put the bag back exactly the way it was. Fix the zipper. Make it look like nothing happened. Because tonight I am going home, and I am going to act like a man who knows absolutely nothing at all. She was already asleep when I got home, or she was pretending to be. After 43 years, I still could not always tell the difference, and that thought, which once would have seemed merely philosophical, now carried an entirely different kind of weight. I undressed in the dark, moved to my side of the bed, and lay down on top of the covers for a moment before pulling them back and getting underneath. The mattress shifted slightly with my weight. Diane did not move. Her breathing was slow and even, the particular rhythm I had fallen asleep beside for decades. I looked at the ceiling. The street light outside pushed a thin line of amber through the gap in the curtains, running diagonally across the plaster like a fault line. I tracked it with my eyes, and I did not think about how I felt. I thought about what I knew. Item 1. There was a hidden compartment in her bag, constructed to be undetectable under normal handling. That compartment had existed long enough to accumulate 4 photographs and 2 written documents. This was not impulsive. This was planned. Item 2. The transition plan had 12 steps. 4 of them had already been completed based on what I could infer. Step 4. Establishing a pattern of cognitive concerns with a family physician was already underway, or I had no reason to assume otherwise. 60 days of documentation the plan specified. That meant it had started in October at the latest, possibly earlier. Item 3. Plan B. Stairs or meds, whichever comes first. 7 words written in the same hand that had left me notes on the kitchen counter for 4 decades. I did not let myself stay on that for long. Staying on it would not help me. The only thing to do was think like an engineer, identify the system, map the components, find every point of failure, then build a counter system that was stronger, more precise, and invisible until the moment it needed to be seen. I needed 3 things: physical evidence. I had it. Financial proof. I did not have it yet. Medical proof that I was exactly as sharp as I had always been, that the cognitive concerns narrative was fiction. I did not have that yet either. All 3 had to exist simultaneously, and all 3 had to be irrefutable. I closed my eyes, listened to her breathe, and I started making a list. The next morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table when she came downstairs at 8:23. I heard her on the stairs before I saw her, the familiar creak of the 3rd step from the bottom, the soft drag of her slippers across the hardwood. I already had the coffee poured, 2 mugs, the way we'd done it every morning for more years than I cared to count. "Morning," I said, not looking up from the newspaper.
Morning.
She pulled out her chair and wrapped both hands around the mug the way she always did, when October hadn't fully warmed the house yet. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. I turned a page of the newspaper and read nothing on it.
I might call Claire. See if she wants to come Saturday.
That would be nice. Thomas probably won't make it until Christmas.
Probably not.
She sighed, not unhappily, just the way you acknowledge distance without dwelling on it. Then she reached for the cream, and her eyes moved, just for a single second, to the hallway shelf. 1 second, no more. It wasn't admiration, it wasn't habit. It was the look of a person confirming that a lock is still engaged. Quick, precise, satisfied. Then she looked back at her coffee and stirred it slowly, and her face was as open and calm as any other Wednesday morning.
The maple is really something this year.
It is, I agreed. I got up and refilled her mug without being asked. She smiled and thanked me. We sat together in the warm kitchen light, and I kept my face perfectly still, and I thought about 9 weeks. I thought, she just checked on it. She doesn't know it's already been opened. Be patient. Be exactly who she expects you to be. 2 nights later, Diane went to bed early. She said she had a headache. She kissed me on the cheek the way she always did, and I listened to her footsteps on the stairs until the bedroom door closed. I sat with my book for another hour, then went up to retrieve a novel I had left on my nightstand. That's when I noticed the vanity drawer, not fully closed, a 1/4 inch of navy blue showing at the corner. I stood very still. Diane's breathing from the bed was slow and even. I lifted the folder out and took it to the bathroom, closed the door, turned the tap on low, and opened it under the vanity light. Petition for appointment of guardian. State of Maine Probate Court. A guardianship petition asks a judge to declare someone legally incapacitated, unable to make their own decisions about health, finances, or property. Once a court grants it, that person loses the legal right to refuse medical treatment, manage their own money, or sign any document on their own behalf. The respondent listed on this form was Harold James Bennett. The form was 80% complete. Diane had filled in my date of birth, our address, the children's names. The section describing my alleged incapacity cited progressive memory impairment, impaired judgment, and inability to manage financial affairs. 3 careful paragraphs written by someone who had thought hard about what a judge would find credible. 2 lines remained blank. One required a physician's signature. One required a filing date. Clipped inside the cover was a business card, Martin Klein, Esquire. On the back, in Diane's handwriting, "Ready when you are." I stood at that counter for a long time with the water running softly beside me. She didn't need me dead. Not yet. She needed me declared legally incapable first. Every door locked from the outside, every signature invalidated, every objection I might raise rendered meaningless by a court order. After that, plan B, stairs or meds, whichever comes first, required no staging at all. I put the folder back exactly as I'd found it. 1/4 inch gap at the corner, exactly right. I left the house at 5:55 the next morning. Diane was still asleep. I walked 3 blocks down Westbrook Drive, sat in my car without starting the engine, and pulled out my phone. I dialed a real estate attorney I had worked with 8 years ago, a woman who thought in systems the same way I did. Not feelings first, structure first. Find where it breaks, then fix it. She picked up on the 3rd ring.
Heart.
"Evelyn, it's Harold Bennett. I don't know if you remember."
I remember. 8 years ago, the Westbrook survey dispute. What's happened?
I gave her 3 minutes. No editorializing, no emotion. Just the sequence of events in order. The bag, Vince, the photographs, the transition plan, the guardianship folder, the note about stairs and medication. I heard her pen moving on paper while I talked. When I finished, she was quiet for exactly 10 seconds. I counted.
All right. Here's what you do not do. You do not confront her. You do not change your behavior in any way she could notice. You do not move money, close accounts, or make any financial changes whatsoever. Any of those things could be used against you later. It makes you look reactive, or worse, guilty of something yourself. Can you do that?
Yes.
There's someone else I want you to think about. Your household accountant. If Diane has been moving assets, the accountant either knows or has been deliberately kept from knowing. Either way, that person is relevant.
Her name is Lena Marsh. She's been with us 7 years.
I'll look into her quietly. Don't approach her yourself yet. Come to my office today. 2 o'clock. Come alone. Don't tell Diane where you're going. And Harold, you did the right thing waiting. Most people don't.
Her office was on the 4th floor of one city center. She was 49, trim, with short gray streaked hair, and the kind of posture that suggested she had never in her adult life slouched in a chair. She stood when I came in, shook my hand once, and sat back down before I had fully settled into my seat.
Walk me through it again. Slower this time.
I laid everything out: the photographs, the checklist, the guardianship petition, the Plan B note. I had brought the USB drive from Vince. She plugged it into her laptop without being asked, studied the images in silence, read the transition plan twice, and wrote steadily on her legal pad throughout.
3 layers. That's what we need. That's what I figured. Physical evidence. You have it. Financial proof. We need bank records. And we need to establish the forgery on the power of attorney before she tries to use it. Medical. We need an independent cognitive evaluation from a physician with no connection to your family. And all 3 have to be ready at the same time. You understand why. 1 layer is anecdotal, 2 is a dispute, 3 is a case.
I understand. What do I do in the meantime?
You go home, you make dinner, you watch television. You act like a man who has absolutely no idea that anything is wrong. How long can you do that?
I thought about the amber line on the ceiling, about Diane's breathing in the dark, about the breakfast table and the maple tree, and 43 years of Wednesday mornings. As long as I need to, I said. How long do we have?
5 weeks. Maybe 6 if she runs into delays. So, let's not have delays on our end.
It started on a Sunday. Small things, quiet things, the kind that leave no mark. We were at the breakfast table when Diane set her mug down and said with a look of gentle concern that was almost perfectly constructed,
Did you remember where you put the car keys last night? You were looking for them for a while.
I had not been looking for them. I knew exactly where the keys were, on the hook by the back door where they had lived for 11 years. I had put them there myself at 7:15 the previous evening. Found them fine, I said, turning a page of the newspaper.
Oh, good. I just worry sometimes. You've seemed a little scattered lately.
I said nothing. I kept my eyes on the page. 2 days later, over dinner, she did it again.
I already told you about Sharon's appointment, Harold, last Tuesday. Don't you remember?
She had not told me. I was certain of it. I kept a precise mental log of our conversations now, the way I used to track tolerances on a machine component, noting every deviation from spec. Must have slipped by me, I said, and picked up my fork. She reached across and touched my hand. Soft concern.
I just think maybe we should talk to Dr. Pierce, just to check up. Nothing serious.
I looked at her hand on mine. Sure, I said, whatever you think. That night, I sat at my desk with the door closed and wrote it all down. Date, time, exact words, context. Every entry in my own handwriting time-stamped on my phone as a backup. A record she didn't know existed of conversations she thought would dissolve into the ordinary fog of daily life. She was building a version of me, forgetful, uncertain, a man who needed managing. I was building a different record entirely. Diane had yoga every Monday morning from 9:30 to 11. She had kept that schedule without exception for 6 years, which meant I had a 90-minute window, reliable, predictable, and wide enough to work with. I left the house at 9:45 and drove to First Harbor Bank on Middle Street. I didn't go to a teller. I went to the receptionist near the back and said I needed to speak with someone in fraud prevention. Maya Collins came out 4 minutes later. She showed me to a small private office.
What can I help you with, Mr. Bennett?
I have a joint savings account here with my wife, I said. I have reason to believe there have been unauthorized transactions on that account. I'd like to review the activity for the past 12 months. I believe my signature may have been forged on an authorization document.
I can pull that up. I'm going to need you to come back Wednesday. Bring a valid ID and any original signed documents you have from before this year. Something we can use as a baseline comparison. Can you do that Wednesday at 2?
I'll be here. Maya had the records ready when I arrived Wednesday at 2 light sharp. She had 2 documents on the desk, each one sealed in a clear protective sleeve, and she had turned her monitor so I could see the screen from my side of the desk.
I want to show you something. This is your signature from the original joint account agreement in 2019, and this is the signature on a financial power of attorney authorization filed in August of this year.
I looked at both of them. They were close. Someone had put real effort into it. The general shape was right. The loop on the H, the way the double T dropped below the line. But I had signed my name roughly 40,000 times in my life, and I knew exactly what it felt like. The specific angle my wrist naturally carried, the slight rightward lean on the last letters. The 2025 signature leaned differently by maybe 3 degrees, consistent through the entire signature, which meant it wasn't random variation. It was someone who had practiced from a sample.
The downstroke on every letter angle's right. Consistent deviation throughout. That's characteristic of someone copying from a model rather than signing naturally. Mr. Bennett, in my professional opinion, this signature was not written by the same person.
The words landed in the room like stones dropped into still water. How much has moved? I asked.
4 transfers over 4 months, June through September of this year. Each one under $90,000. A total of $340,000.
Why under 90,000? I asked, though I already knew.
Federal law requires banks to report cash transactions over 10,000 automatically. Structuring transactions to stay under reporting thresholds is itself a federal offense, regardless of where the money came from. It went to a third-party account. We're still identifying it. Mr. Bennett, I need you to come back Friday. There are additional steps we need to take, and I want our compliance officer present. I'm sorry. I know this isn't easy to hear.
I looked at the number on the screen one more time. Gone since June, while I was living my ordinary life, reading my newspaper, refilling her coffee cup every morning. I'll be here, I said. I called Evelyn from the parking garage before I started the car. I read her the numbers from memory.
Structuring is a federal offense. Bank Secrecy Act. Even if the underlying money was legitimately hers, deliberately breaking up transfers to avoid automatic reporting is a crime in itself. This is good, Harold. This is layer 2 taking shape.
There's more. The signature on the power of attorney authorization. Maya Collins confirmed it's a forgery. Consistent deviation, practice copy, not my natural hand.
Forgery on a power of attorney document is a Class C felony in Maine. That's up to 5 years. Combined with the structuring charges, we're no longer talking about a civil dispute. I'm calling Maya Collins since this after noon. We need a soft freeze on that account. Not a full block. Not yet. We want Diane to be able to attempt another transaction. We need to catch her in motion.
What does a soft freeze do exactly?
Any transaction over 5,000 gets flagged and held for 48 hours before it clears. Maya notifies us before the money moves. Diane won't see any change from her end. She'll think everything is normal, but the next time she tries to move money, we'll know about it before it leaves. Get home. Act normal. I'll handle the bank.
I started the car, pulled out of the garage onto Middle Street, into the flat gray light of a Wednesday afternoon in October. And I drove home. Layer 2, I thought. Done. Vince called me on a Wednesday afternoon in early November, just as the last light was leaving the sky. He told me to come by after hours. I came the next evening through the side door, the way I always did now. The shop was closed and quiet. Vince was standing at the shelves along the far wall, wooden shelves lined with ledger books, each one dated on the spine in his neat handwriting. 26 years of work cataloged and kept. He pulled one from the middle shelf and opened it to a page marked with blue painter's tape.
April 14th. Read the entry.
The entry was in his handwriting, methodical and precise. Burgundy cowhide handbag, medium size. Customer request. Remove bottom, replace lining. Add concealed interior compartment per hand-drawn specification. Below that, a description of dimensions and placement. And at the bottom, cash payment. Customer declined to leave name. Female, approximately mid-60s, short silver hair, navy jacket, gold band ring, right hand, fourth finger. I read it twice. April 14th. 6 months before I ever touched that bag. 6 months before the zipper gave me a reason to walk through Vince's front door.
She came in with a sketch. Hand-drawn, precise measurements. She knew exactly what she wanted and exactly where she wanted it. I thought it was unusual at the time. Women ask for extra pockets. They don't usually come in with architectural drawings. I remember her specifically because she looked at the finished work for about 30 seconds without touching it, nodded once, and left like she was inspecting a piece of equipment.
I need this ledger, I said.
I made a copy this morning. Original stays with me. Evelyn Hart called yesterday. She said it would work better that way. Evidence chain. Here. Just make sure it counts.
Evelyn had made another call 2 days earlier. Jordan Reyes, the pharmacist at Eastside Pharmacy, had agreed to speak with me voluntarily before the store opened at 7:30 in the morning through the back entrance on the side alley. Evelyn had been careful about the approach. No subpoena, no official pressure. Just a quiet request from a lawyer with a legitimate fraud case. Jordan was 38, with careful eyes, and the measured movements of someone who spent their days dealing in precise quantities. He met me at the back door himself and led me to a small office.
I pulled the records last night. Your wife, Diane Bennett, purchased digoxin on 3 separate occasions. August 28th, September 19th, and October 14th. You are not prescribed digoxin, Mr. Bennett. Your prescription history here shows metoprolol for blood pressure management. That's all.
What is digoxin prescribed for?
Heart conditions. Atrial fibrillation, heart failure. It regulates heart rhythm. At therapeutic doses in the right patient, it's an effective medication. At elevated doses in a patient who was not prescribed it, particularly a patient already taking metoprolol, the interaction can cause severe bradycardia, meaning the heart slows down too much. In a man your age, with a history of blood pressure medication, it could present as a cardiac event, natural causes. Mr. Bennett, I have to ask, did you ever take any medication that you didn't recognize or weren't told about?
Something cold moved through my chest. Not knowingly, I said carefully.
The camera above our dispenser counter recorded all 3 purchases. I've flagged the footage with timestamps. I don't know your full situation, but I know what these records look like, and I know what the right thing to do is. One more thing. Your wife purchased all 3 times with cash. No insurance. She didn't want a record, except that we keep one anyway.
Frank Dorsey had been my neighbor for 11 years. He was 63, broad-shouldered and deliberate. Every Thursday afternoon, weather permitting, we played chess on his back porch. He was not a man who dramatized things or offered opinions he hadn't been asked for, which was why when he came over on a Friday afternoon with the excuse of returning a handsaw, I knew something was wrong before he got through the door. We sat at my kitchen table.
You got a minute? My wife ran into Sharon Mills at the grocery store Tuesday. Sharon told her that you'd been having serious memory problems. That you'd gotten lost driving home from the hardware store last month. That Diane was worried and was trying to figure out what to do. She said it like it was just known, like everyone already knew.
Frank, when did we last play chess?
Last Thursday.
Who won?
You did. 3 games in under 40 minutes each.
Did I seem confused to you?
No. You seemed like you were enjoying yourself. That's why I came over, because it didn't add up.
I leaned forward slightly. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think about it carefully before you answer. I need you to think back over the last month. Every time we've talked, every time you've seen me come and go, every game we've played, I need you to write it down. Dates, times, what you observed. As specific as you can be.
This is serious. It wasn't a question.
Yes, I said, it is.
I'll have something for you by Sunday. And Harold, whatever's going on, you're not confused. I'd stake my own memory on it.
He left without waiting for an answer. I stood at the kitchen window and watched his footsteps deliberate on the frost-hardened grass. I thought, she's not just writing me out of my own life. She's recruiting the neighborhood to hold the pen. Evelyn had asked me to go back further. After the bank confirmed the 4 transfers from June through September, she wanted me to pull every transaction record I could access going back 3 years. Look for patterns, she had said. Unusual deposits, irregular timing. On the evening of the 25th, after Diane had gone to bed, I sat in my study and went through the records. I found the deposit at 11:17 p.m. March 14th, 2022. $50,000 wire transfer into a personal account Diane maintained separately. The sender, Gavin Shaw. I pulled up the photograph on my laptop. The one Vince had captured from the hidden compartment. The man in the dark jacket in the Portland Harbor Hotel lobby. Gavin Shaw. I opened our shared calendar archive. June 2022. Meeting with Martin Klein regarding estate planning. A week later, Dr. Pierce annual checkup. And then, in Diane's handwriting in the physical planner, discuss joint will, medical poll with Harold. Approach carefully. March 2022, $50,000 from Gavin Shaw. June 2022, first conversation about joint wills and shared power of attorney. 3 months. The distance between a payment and a plan. Dr. Samuel Pierce had been our family physician for 15 years. A good man, I had always thought. A careful one, which was why, when he arrived at our house on the afternoon of November 26th at Diane's invitation, a house call. Something he rarely did. I watched him set his bag down in our living room and felt something close to grief, because he was here to help her build the file. He asked his first question, with the careful casualness of a man who had rehearsed it. How have you been feeling lately? Any trouble with concentration, keeping track of things? I answered him directly. I asked him to clarify his testing methodology, mentioning the MMSE and the MOCA, the technical metrics for cognitive decline. For the first time since he had arrived, Dr. Pierce looked at me, really looked. Not at his notes, not at Diane, but directly at me. I saw something move behind his eyes. Like a man who has just realized the ground under his feet is different from what he was told it would be. When he stood to leave, he shook my hand. His grip was firm. He held it a half-second longer than a routine farewell required. At the door, he turned back and looked at me one more time. Not at Diane. At me. I couldn't read the expression on his face, but I didn't forget it. 2 days later, Evelyn called me in the morning. I drove straight to her office. She was standing at the window when I came in, which was unusual. Evelyn Hart was a woman who sat at tables and worked from them, not a person who stood at windows. She turned when I entered and pointed to the chair across from her desk.
Dr. Pierce called us last night. He found my number through the Bar Association directory. He said he was asked to create a medical record, establishing a pattern of cognitive decline in a patient he has known for 15 years. He said he met with that patient recently and found no evidence of cognitive decline whatsoever. He was not comfortable with what he had been asked to do, and he wanted the patient to know.
The room was quiet for a long moment. He's doing the right thing, I said finally.
He is. Late, but he is. He didn't know you were already my client. He just wanted to reach whoever was protecting you. He's already contacted Dr. Nora Whitman at Maine Medical Center. She's a neurologist, independent, no prior relationship with your family. He asked her to conduct a proper evaluation. He also said he intends to file a voluntary report with the Maine Board of Licensure in Medicine, acknowledging that he allowed himself to be guided by a family member in creating documentation that he now believes was not medically justified.
I sat with that for a moment. In 26 years of working with precision machinery, I had watched components fail and components hold. The ones that held under pressure were always the ones you hadn't designed into the load-bearing structure.
He's also providing a written statement that Diane Bennett initiated contact with him in September and specifically requested documentation of memory concerns. That's conspiracy to commit fraud on the court. Harold, this changes the shape of everything.
When can I see Dr. Whitman? I asked.
Wednesday, 10 o'clock, bring Claire.
Dr. Nora Whitman's office was on the 3rd floor of Maine Medical Center. She was 52, with reading glasses pushed up into gray-streaked hair, and the particular stillness of someone who had spent decades listening carefully. She shook my hand, then my daughter Claire's, and showed us both to chairs before sitting across from us with a clean legal pad.
I want to be clear about something before we begin. I have not reviewed any prior documentation about you, Mr. Bennett. I asked Dr. Pierce specifically not to send me anything. I want a clean baseline. Is that acceptable to you?
More than acceptable, I said. The assessment took 90 minutes. She administered the first 30 points, covering short-term memory, visual spatial ability, executive function, attention, language, and orientation. Then 40 minutes of clinical interview during which she asked about my engineering career, my daily routines, my reading habits, and my opinion on a recent article about infrastructure decay in New England cities, a conversation that she periodically interrupted with a quiet note on her legal pad. Claire sat in the corner chair without speaking, watching me answer every question with the focused, unhurried precision of a man who trusted his own mind completely. When Dr. Whitman finished, she set her pen down and looked at me directly.
Mr. Bennett, your cognitive function is fully intact. Short-term and long-term memory are within normal range for a healthy 68-year-old. Executive function is notably strong. There's no evidence of any cognitive decline that would warrant further evaluation, let alone legal intervention. I'll have the full written assessment to your attorney by end of day.
The room was very quiet. Thank you, I said. She handed me a copy across the desk. 4 pages signed, dated, the Maine Medical Center, letterhead across the top.
Mr. Bennett, no one should have to come here to prove themselves.
Her voice had shifted slightly, still professional, but with something else underneath. Something that sounded like carefully restrained anger on my behalf. I held the door open for Claire. No, I agreed, they shouldn't. Layer 3 was finally irrefutably done. Saturday arrived the way December mornings do in Portland, gray and cold and without apology. I was downstairs by 6:45. The kitchen was dark except for the light above the stove, and I stood at the counter for a moment in the quiet, listening to the particular stillness of a house that doesn't yet know what the day holds. Then I filled the kettle and set it on the burner and texted Evelyn at 7. Even today.
Ready. I'll be on Westbrook Drive by 1:30. Text when you need me inside.
I was reading the paper at the kitchen table when Diane came downstairs at 8:15. She was already dressed, not in her usual weekend clothes, but in the gray wool dress she wore to things that mattered. Her hair was done. She was carrying the navy blue folder under her arm.
You're up early. Lots to do before this afternoon.
She set the folder on the counter and moved to the coffee, her back to me, her movements brisk and purposeful. The folder had Martin Klein's business card clipped to the front. I could see the corner of it from where I sat. What's happening this afternoon? I asked.
Just some family things I've been wanting to sort out. Claire's coming, and Rick, and a few others. Nothing to worry about.
I'm not worried, I said. She held my gaze for just a moment too long. Then she turned back to her coffee, and I turned back to my newspaper, and we sat together in the gray December morning light, the way we had sat together 1,000 times before. Except at this time, I was counting the hours. At 9 o'clock, I went upstairs and showered and dressed slowly, taking my time with each step. I put on the jacket with the inside pocket. I checked the pocket out of habit, though there was nothing in it today. Everything that needed to be carried was already at Evelyn's office, sorted into 3 folders by color. They came at 2 hours, give or take. Rick Hollis, Diane's cousin, was first. He was 62, broad through the shoulders, with the kind of physical confidence that fills a doorframe. He took the armchair closest to the center of the room, the one Diane had positioned there this morning. Sharon Mills arrived 10 minutes later, flushed from the cold. She gave me a hug that had that particular quality of pity. Arms held slightly too long, a pat on the back that lasted 1 beat past comfort.
Harold, you look well.
The way she said it made clear she had expected otherwise. I am well, I said. She smiled the way you smile at someone who doesn't quite understand their own situation and moved to take a seat beside Rick. Claire arrived last, 3 minutes after Sharon. Her eyes found mine immediately. She gave me a small nod, barely perceptible, and chose a chair directly across from me, the one with the clearest sightline to my face. Diane stood at the center of the room. She had been standing there since Rick arrived, positioning herself at the point where every eye in the room would naturally converge.
Thank you all for coming. I've asked you here because I love Harold, and because I'm worried about him, and because I think it's time for our family to have an honest conversation.
Rick nodded. Sharon clasped her hands. I looked at the navy blue folder on the coffee table. 2 folders away from everything changing, I thought. 2 folders and 1 wrong word. Diane read from the caregiver journal for 11 minutes. She had selected the entries carefully, the ones with the most specific detail, the ones that sounded the most credible, the ones she had written on days she believed I had no alibi for. Her voice was steady and low, pitched for concern rather than accusation, and she paused after each entry to let it settle. Rick shook his head slowly. Sharon pressed a hand to her mouth. I sat with my hands on my knees and I did not react, not once. I had made that promise to myself and to Evelyn, and I kept it. When Diane finished, she reached into the navy blue folder and produced a single sheet of paper. She set it on the coffee table in front of Claire.
This is a statement of family concern. It simply confirms that the people closest to Harold share his family's worry about his well-being. It supports our request for a proper medical evaluation by a court-approved specialist. It's not legal action, it's just family looking after family.
Rick reached into his jacket pocket and produced a pen, setting it on the table beside the document with a small, deliberate click.
It's nothing to worry about, Claire. We just need everyone on the same page.
Claire picked up the paper. Read it again. I did not look at her. I looked at the wall above the fireplace, keeping my face completely neutral, and I waited.
I'd like to read this more carefully before I sign anything.
Rick's voice dropped into the register menus when they want to sound reasonable while removing options.
There's nothing complicated in it, Claire. It's a simple statement of...
Claire cut him off, her voice not rising, not wavering. It simply became very clear and very still, the way water becomes still before it freezes.
I heard you. I said I need to read it carefully first. That's what I'm going to do.
She set the paper back on the table, set Rick's pen beside it. The room shifted. Not dramatically, but something moved through it the way pressure moves through a sealed space. Diane looked at me, a quick, assessing glance, the engineer's look I had cataloged months ago. And I looked back at her with a face that gave her absolutely nothing.
Diane, maybe we should give her a...
Diane cut Sharon off, her voice smooth but slightly changed.
It's fine. We have time.
She's recalculating, I thought. Good. Diane brought the pill at 3 exactly. She came from the kitchen carrying a glass of water and the familiar pale yellow capsule on a small ceramic dish. She set it on the side table beside my chair with the practiced naturalness of a woman performing a routine she had performed many times, except she had never done this in front of other people before.
Time for your afternoon medication, honey.
Her voice carried just enough gentle public care to make Rick nod, and Sharon's expression soften into something that looked like confirmation. Frank Dorsey, who had arrived at the front door 6 minutes earlier with the excuse of returning a borrowed book, stood quietly at the edge of the room. He looked at the ceramic dish. He looked at me. He said nothing. I looked at the capsule. I looked at Diane. I looked around the room. Rick in the center chair, Sharon on the sofa, Claire across from me, Frank at the door, Diane standing over me with a glass of water. 6 people. The room sealed and still and waiting, and I thought, now, Diane, I said. My voice was calm and unhurried and carried to every corner of the room. Before I take that, I have a question.
Of course, honey.
Were you planning on the stairs first, I said, or the medication? The room went absolutely silent. Not the silence of confusion, the silence of a held breath. Every person in the room suddenly, simultaneously, not breathing. Diane's smile did not fall. It suspended like a clock that had stopped mid-tick, frozen at the precise moment, before it would have had to become something else.
Harold.
Her voice was still smooth, still reaching for the register of patient concern. Because the plan I found in your bag, I said, listed both options. Stairs or meds, whichever comes first. I want to make sure I understand which timeline we're on. The color left her face, not dramatically, not a sudden draining of blood, not a theatrical collapse, just a slow, quiet evacuation, the way light leaves a room when the sun moves.
That's...
She stopped. Go ahead, I said gently.
You can't prove...
She stopped again, her jaw tightened.
You can't prove what the dosage was.
She hurt herself. I watched the exact moment she hurt herself. Thank you, I said quietly. That's the word I needed. I took out my phone and sent one text. Now. 45 seconds later, the front door opened, and Evelyn Hart walked in from the December cold. 3 folders tucked under her arm, 1 red, 1 green, 1 yellow. Evelyn set the folders on the coffee table without a word of introduction. Red first, then green, then yellow. A clean row in the center of the table, covering the statement of family concern Diane had placed there 20 minutes earlier. She straightened up, looked at every person in the room exactly once.
My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm Harold Bennett's attorney. I'd ask everyone to please sit down.
Rick Hollis did not sit down.
Who let you in?
Evelyn did not even look at him.
Harold did, 3 months ago when he retained me.
She opened the red folder.
Physical evidence. 4 photographs recovered from a concealed compartment in a burgundy leather handbag. A compartment custom ordered at Lyrai Leather on Exchange Street on April 14th of this year, 6 months before Harold was aware of its existence. The order was placed in cash, no name given.
She laid the photographs out on the table face up.
The transition plan. 12 steps, typed with a completion target of December 15th.
She laid that beside the photographs, followed by the handwritten note.
Plan B. Stairs or meds, whichever comes first. I believe we heard one of those options referenced approximately 4 minutes ago.
The room was absolutely still. Then she opened the green folder.
Financial evidence. A report from First Harbor Bank's fraud prevention specialist confirming that the signature on a financial power of attorney filed in August of this year deviates consistently from Harold's authenticated signature by approximately 3 degrees, characteristic of a practiced copy. 4 transfers totaling $340,000, structured in amounts under $90,000 to avoid automatic federal reporting thresholds.
She set Maya's report on the table, along with copies of every document sent to our household accountant. Diane said nothing. She was looking at the green folder with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Not anger, not calculation, but something that looked almost like the specific focus of a person trying very hard to find the exit in a room that has no exits. Evelyn opened the yellow folder.
Medical evidence. Pharmacy records showing 3 cash purchases of digoxin, a cardiac medication Harold is not prescribed, on August 28th, September 19th, and October 14th. A laboratory analysis of a capsule Harold did not swallow on December 5th, confirming digoxin at 0.25 milligrams, double standard therapeutic dose with a documented dangerous interaction with Harold's prescribed metoprolol.
She set Dr. Whitman's report on top.
An independent neurological evaluation signed and dated December 10th, confirming Harold Bennett's cognitive function is fully intact.
She closed all 3 folders.
All 3 reports are from independent sources with no prior relationship to Harold. All original documents are in the custody of my office. Copies have been filed with the Portland Police Department. Mrs. Bennett, I'd strongly recommend you say nothing further without your own attorney present.
For about 5 seconds, no one moved. Then Rick Hollis stood up loudly, with the particular confidence of a man who has never needed to be right, only present.
This is fabricated, all of this. You can't walk into someone's home and...
Evelyn reached into her bag and placed a single document on the table. Notarized original seal visible from across the room.
Vince Larry's signed statement, notarized November 5th, attesting to the April 14th order. I have originals for every document in these folders. You're welcome to examine any of them.
Rick sat back down. Sharon Mills had both hands pressed over her mouth. Her eyes were bright and wet, moving from the folders to Diane to me, and back, like a woman watching a building come down that she had believed was solid. A small sound escaped her, not quite a word.
I didn't know... Diane, you told me he was...
Diane's voice was sharp, reflexive. The voice of a person cutting a thread before it unravels further.
Sharon.
Then she seemed to hear herself, and she stopped. Claire stood up from her chair and crossed the room to stand beside me. She didn't take my hand. She didn't say anything. She just stood there shoulder to shoulder with me, and that was enough. Frank Dorsey reached into his coat pocket and took out his phone.
I have written records with timestamps covering every day in the Caregiver Journal, from November 3rd through December 12th. Every day she says Harold was confused or forgetful. I can account for where he was and what he was doing. I have photographs. I'm prepared to provide all of it.
The front door opened at that exact moment. Martin Klein, Diane's lawyer, stepped into the hallway. He saw the 3 open folders on the coffee table. He saw Evelyn Hart standing in the center of the room. He went very still. He set his briefcase down beside the door.
Miss Hart, I think I need to speak with you privately at your earliest convenience.
Evelyn didn't even turn around.
My office, Monday morning, 8 o'clock.
Diane was sitting on the sofa now. At some point in the last few minutes, she had moved from the center of the room, the commanding position she had held for the entire afternoon, to the corner of the sofa. She sat with her hands in her lap, and she looked at the 3 folders on the table, and she said nothing at all. I looked at her. For a long moment, I just looked at the woman I had been married to for 43 years. Evelyn, I said, make the call. 2 officers arrived at 4:15. Evelyn had called Portland PD before she walked through my front door. This was not a 911 call. This was a prearranged law enforcement response to a documented case, which meant when the patrol car pulled up to the house on Westbrook Drive, both officers already knew the outline of what they were walking into. They were professional and quiet. One spoke briefly with Evelyn at the door. The other remained in the hallway. Diane stood when they came in. She smoothed her gray dress, the one she had put on that morning for a day she had been planning for 3 years. She looked at the officer in front of her.
I understand.
She didn't look at Rick. She didn't look at Sharon. She didn't look at Claire. She looked at me. It was a long look, 4 or 5 seconds, maybe more. And I had known this woman for 43 years. I had read her face across breakfast tables and hospital waiting rooms, in the front seats of cars, on long drives, and I could not read what was in that look. Not anger, not grief, not the calculation I had grown accustomed to watching move behind her eyes. Something else. Something I had no name for, and would spend a long time not being able to name. Then she turned and walked out of the living room, and through the front door, and the December cold came in briefly before the door swung shut behind her. The patrol car's lights moved slowly out of the driveway and down Westbrook Drive. And then the street was quiet and the living room was quiet. Rick Hollis was putting on his coat without saying a word. Sharon was crying softly into a tissue. Frank was standing at the window with his hands in his pockets, looking out at the empty street. Claire was still standing beside me.
Are you all right?
Her voice was quiet. I thought about that for a moment. The honest answer was complicated, and I was entirely tired of complicated answers. I'm still here, I said. She nodded the way she had nodded at Portland Headlight. Like that was enough. Like that was in fact everything.
Come on. Let me make you some coffee.
We walked together into the kitchen, and I heard Frank follow us in. Outside, the December dark was coming down fast and early, the way it always does in Maine. And the house was quieter than it had ever been. 3 days after the officers left Westbrook Drive, I sat in Evelyn Hart's conference room for the 4th time. The table was clean. No folders this time. They were in police custody now, logged and sealed, doing the work they had been built to do. Evelyn sat across from me with a fresh legal pad, and Claire sat beside me with her coat still on, the way she did when she wasn't planning to stay longer than necessary.
Here's where we are.
Evelyn went through it the way she went through everything, methodically, without softening it.
The DA's office has received the full file. Based on what's been submitted, we're looking at several counts. Forgery on the power of attorney. That's a Class C felony in Maine, up to 5 years. The structured financial transfers, $340,000 through fraudulent authorization. That's theft by deception above $10,000. A Class B felony, up to 10 years.
She paused, letting the weight of the years settle into the room.
The digoxin. Purchasing a prescription cardiac medication without a prescription. Administering it to a person without their knowledge, in a dosage that creates a life-threatening drug interaction. The DA is reviewing that as attempted murder. Class A felony, up to 30 years.
Claire was very still beside me.
Martin Klein contacted my office Saturday evening. He's entered into a cooperation agreement with the investigation. The guardianship petition documents become evidence against Diane rather than for her. Dr. Pierce filed his voluntary report with the Maine Board of Licensure on Sunday. He's acknowledged that he allowed himself to be directed via family member to create documentation without independent clinical basis. His license is under review, but his cooperation strengthens the conspiracy charge significantly.
And Lena, I asked.
She met with the investigator yesterday morning. Full cooperation. Every email, every document, instruction, every phone call she kept records of. She's been told she's not a target of the investigation. She did the right thing eventually.
Eventually, I said.
It counts.
She closed the legal pad. For a moment, the room was quiet, the kind of quiet that follows the end of something large.
Harold.
Her voice shifted, still professional, but with the particular directness she reserved for things that mattered outside of strategy.
You should know, I've handled fraud cases for 22 years. I have never seen a private individual build a 3-layer evidentiary case of this quality without law enforcement assistance. You did something very difficult, very carefully, under conditions that would have broken most people.
I didn't know what to say to that. I looked at the empty table where the 3 folders had been.
He had help.
Claire's voice was quiet beside me.
He did. Are you all right, Harold?
I thought about that. The same question Claire had asked me in the kitchen 3 days ago, with the December dark coming in through the windows. I will be, I said. That's close enough for now. Thomas arrived at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. He had driven up from Boston that morning, which meant he had been in the car with his thoughts for 2 hours before he walked through my front door. I could see the weight of that in the way he moved. Careful, contained. Like a man carrying something he hadn't figured out yet how to set down. He was 39, broader than I remembered from the last time I'd seen him in September, with a particular tiredness around the eyes that comes from not sleeping well for several days. He hugged me at the door. A real hug, longer than our usual. And then stepped back and looked at me. The way you look at someone you've been worried about and are relieved to find, standing. Claire had made beef stew, the recipe that had been our mother's and was now hers. The 3 of us sat around the kitchen table the way we had sat around kitchen tables for 30 years. For the first few minutes, we talked about the drive, the weather, the parking situation on Westbrook Drive in December. Then, Thomas set down his spoon.
How long did you know?
Since October 8th, I said.
2 months. You knew for 2 months. And why didn't you call me?
Because I needed enough, I said. One piece wasn't enough. If I had called you in October with a photograph and a checklist, what would you have done? He was quiet for a long pause.
I don't know.
You would have called her, or come down here and confronted her, and she would have explained it away, and we'd have lost everything. I held his gaze. I needed all 3 layers at once. I needed it to be something she couldn't walk out of. Thomas looked at his bowl, at the table, at some point, in the middle distance that wasn't in the room.
Was any of it real? The marriage? Was any of it actually real?
It was the question I had been sitting with since October. Since the night I found $50,000 from Gavin Shaw in a calendar notation that read, "Approach carefully." I don't know, I said honestly. I've stopped needing to know. Thomas looked up at me sharply, not angry but surprised. The people in this room are real, I said. That's what I know. That's what I have. Something shifted in his face then. Not resolution exactly, more like the beginning of it. The first movement of a thing that would take longer to complete, but had finally started. Claire refilled his bowl without asking. He let her. Outside the kitchen window, the December dark had come down early, and the light above the stove made the room warm and small and exactly the right size. Frank was already on his back porch when I came through the gate on Wednesday afternoon. The chessboard was set up on the wooden table between the 2 chairs. The pieces arranged for a new game, a thermos of coffee sitting beside it with 2 mugs. He looked up when I came through the gate, nodded once, and poured the coffee without being asked. We sat down. He moved his king's pawn 2 squares forward. I mirrored him. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. That was the thing about chess with Frank. It had its own language, and sometimes that language was enough. After the third move, he reached into the inside pocket of his coat and produced a spiral-bound notebook, about 60 pages covered in his neat, unhurried handwriting. He set it on the table beside the board.
Evelyn called me Monday. She said the investigators would need the original. I made you a copy.
He tapped the notebook.
Every day from November 1st to December 13th. Date, time, what I saw or heard, who else was present if anyone. Photographs are on my phone with timestamps. She has those already.
I picked up the notebook, opened it to the first page. November 1st, 2025, 1:47 p.m. Harold Bennett arrived at my residence for our weekly chess session. Appeared alert, oriented, engaged. Won 2 of 3 games in approximately 35 minutes each. I closed it. Frank, I said, you spent 6 weeks writing this.
I had the time.
You didn't have to. He looked up at me over the board with the expression of a man who has considered an argument and found it unpersuasive.
You're my neighbor. You've been my neighbor for 11 years. I've watched you fix that fence 3 times because you insist on doing it right instead of fast.
He picked up his coffee mug.
A man who fixes a fence that carefully deserves someone who writes things down carefully. Your move.
I looked at the board for a moment. Then I moved my bishop. We played for an hour and a half. When I stood to leave, I tucked the notebook inside my jacket. Thank you, I said. He was already resetting the board for next week.
Same time Thursday.
Maya Collins called at 9:15 on a Monday morning. I was at the kitchen table with coffee and the newspaper. A habit I had kept through everything, because some habits are load-bearing in ways you don't fully appreciate until you test them. Her voice was the same as it always was. Measured, professional, carrying information efficiently.
Mr. Bennett, I wanted to update you personally before the formal notification goes out. The account belonging to Gavin Shaw has been frozen by court order as of Friday. All $340,000 are confirmed present and accounted for. The DA's office has filed for a recovery order. The timeline for return to your account is approximately 6 to 8 weeks, pending final court approval.
I set the newspaper down. That's good news.
There's more. The investigation into Mr. Shaw's account turned up something the DA's office thought you should know. Investigators found a folder of documents in Diane Bennett's home office. Apparently prepared, but never filed. The documents appear to be a fraud complaint naming Gavin Shaw as having embezzled funds from the Bennett household.
She let that land for a moment.
Mr. Shaw, it appears, had no knowledge of the plan regarding the medication or the staircase. According to the investigators, Diane had told Shaw that you were experiencing serious cognitive decline and that the transfers were a legally structured form of asset protection, moving funds out of your reach before you made decisions that could damage the family's finances. Shaw had believed he was helping facilitate a legitimate arrangement between a worried wife and a vulnerable husband. He had not asked enough questions, which is its own kind of problem, but it was a different problem from the one Diane was facing.
I sat with that for a long moment. Outside the kitchen window, the December sky was the particular flat white of a day that can't decide between snow and cloud. She was going to have him arrested, I said.
That's what the evidence suggests. He was the last piece she intended to remove.
I called Evelyn immediately after. She listened to the summary without interrupting.
She built a machine designed to eliminate every person who knew too much, including the person she built it with. Harold, in 22 years, I have never seen a case where the architect of a conspiracy was also the final target of it.
Is Gavin Shaw being charged?
That depends on what he knew and when he knew it. Right now, he's cooperating fully. He's also apparently quite shaken.
I imagined he was. I looked out at the flat white sky and I thought about a man in a dark jacket in the Portland Harbor hotel lobby, confident and unremarkable, who had believed himself to be a partner in something and had been, all along, an instrument in a plan he didn't know the full shape of. Nobody in that machine was safe, I thought. Not even the people running it. Claire put the tree up on the morning of the 24th. It was a small one, 3 feet tall, slightly lopsided on the left side in a way she claimed was character. And I suspect it was just a tree she could carry by herself. Thomas arrived at noon with a bottle of Merlot and the expression of a man who had made a decision somewhere on the drive up from Boston and was carrying it lightly now. Frank came at 5:30, stomping snow off his boots at the front door, carrying a container of cookies his neighbor had apparently made. And he had apparently claimed as his own contribution.
I helped.
Frank said, when Claire raised an eyebrow.
By eating half of them?
Thomas asked.
By not eating all of them. That's a significant contribution.
We ate around the kitchen table. Claire's beef stew again, because Thomas had asked for it specifically. Frank opened the Merlot. Thomas found wine glasses in the cabinet above the refrigerator, the ones Diane had bought for dinner parties. For a moment he held them, looked at them, and then set them on the counter without saying anything. Claire took them from him and filled them, and nobody said anything about any of it. After dinner, Frank told the story about his brother's dog and the Thanksgiving turkey, a story I had heard at least a dozen times, a story Thomas had heard 4 times at minimum, a story Claire could recite from memory. It was the story Frank told when he wanted a room to laugh, and it worked every time, because he told it with the absolute conviction of a man who still found it funny after 20 years. Thomas started laughing before the punchline. Claire covered her face with her hand. I laughed the way you laugh when you haven't laughed in a while, and your body has to remember how. Afterward, when the dishes were done and the wine was mostly gone, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee. I looked at the 3 of them, Thomas leaning back in his chair, Claire turning her wine glass slowly in her hands, Frank watching the small lopsided tree blink in the corner. I thought about a woman who had spent 3 years building a plan to take this from me. This table, these people, this particular quality of silence that means everyone in the room is comfortable enough not to need to fill it. She had come so close.
Merry Christmas, Harold,
Frank said from the armchair without opening his eyes. Merry Christmas, Frank, I said. Vince unlocked the side door of Larry Leather at 8 on the morning of December 26th. The street was empty in the way streets are empty on the day after Christmas. A particular kind of quiet, like the city is taking a breath before the new year arrives to complicate things again. He was standing at the workbench when I came in, but he wasn't working. On the bench in front of him sat the burgundy leather bag inside a clear plastic evidence sleeve, sealed with a label I could read from across the room. Evidence CR 2025-847. Portland PD.
Evelyn said they'd collected this morning.
I know. I crossed the room and stood beside him, looking at the bag. I wanted to be here first. We stood in silence for a moment.
I almost didn't call you. When I found it, I almost just put it back. Told myself it was none of my business.
What made you call?
I kept thinking about what it would look like if I didn't. If I put it back and I kept thinking about it. I'm not a brave man, Harold. I'm just a man who couldn't not make that call once I knew what I was looking at.
That's what brave is, I said. You did the right thing. Everything else that happened, it started with that call. He picked up a clipboard from beside the bench and handed it to me. The receipt for evidence transfer. I signed it and handed it back. We stood there a moment longer.
You doing all right?
Better than I was, I said. Getting there. He nodded. That was enough for him. I walked back out through the side door into the December cold, and I stood on the pavement and looked through the front window of the shop at the burgundy bag, in its clear evidence sleeve, sitting on the workbench, under the lamp, a leather bag with a stuck zipper. I only wanted to fix the zipper, I thought, and it saved my life. I drove to the harbor on the morning of the 30th because I didn't know where else to go. Not in a lost way, in the way that certain places hold certain kinds of thinking. I parked and walked to the end of the pier. The cold was clean and direct. A man was unloading crates from a lobster boat at the far end, moving with unhurried efficiency. He glanced up when I walked past.
Cold morning.
It is, I said. Supposed to warm up Thursday.
I'll believe it when I feel it.
He laughed a short, honest laugh and went back to his crates. I walked to the end of the pier and stood with my hands in my pockets and looked out at the harbor. I thought about 43 years. Not all of them at once. That would have been too much for any one morning, but pieces. The kitchen table Diane and I had argued about for 3 weeks in 1987. The summer Thomas was 8 and fell asleep in the back seat driving home from Acadia. Claire at 22 calling me from her first apartment. I thought about what had been real, and I decided standing at the end of that pier with the Atlantic wind in my face that more of it had been real than I was inclined to credit in my darker moments. Not the last 3 years, but before that, there were decades of ordinary life that had been exactly what they appeared to be. And those decades had produced Claire and Thomas in a house I knew by feel in the dark, in a neighbor named Frank who wrote things down in a spiral notebook because he thought the truth mattered. That was a life. Not the one I thought I had, but a real one. Claire and Thomas arrived at 7 on New Year's Eve, with groceries and wine, and the deliberate good cheer of 2 people who had decided, without discussing it, to make the evening what it needed to be. By 10 o'clock, the house was warm and smelled of garlic and rosemary. I sat by the window and listened to them talk in the kitchen. At 10, I slipped away to my study. The fireproof box was in the bottom drawer where it always was. I opened it and found what I was looking for near the top. A single sheet of yellow legal pad paper folded in half. I didn't need to unfold it. I knew what it said. Layer 1, Layer 2, Layer 3. I had written those words as a promise to myself. I held the page for a moment. Then I dropped it into the wastebasket. It made no sound at all when it landed.
Dad, come on. It's almost time.
1 second, I called. But I sat there a moment longer in the quiet of the study. I thought about a burgundy leather bag. About Vince, who couldn't stay silent. About Evelyn, who thought in structures. About Frank. About a zipper that stuck on exactly the right morning.
Dad.
I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked out of the study and down the hall toward the sound of my children counting down.
10, 9.
At midnight, Thomas put his arm around my shoulder, and Claire leaned her head briefly against mine. Outside on Westbrook Drive, someone was setting off fireworks that lit the December sky in brief, bright colors.
Happy New Year, Dad.
Happy New Year, I said. Both of you. We stood at the window for a while, the three of us watching the light. I've lived long enough to know that family betrayal isn't a story you see in the movies. It doesn't arrive with a dramatic soundtrack, a villainous monologue, or a sudden explosive confrontation. It is quiet. It hides behind shared meals, familiar voices, and doors you never thought you had to lock. It sits across from you at the breakfast table, pouring your coffee and commenting on the changing leaves in the backyard. It masks itself in 43 years of routine, wrapping its fingers around the very foundation of your life, while you are busy reading the morning paper. Looking back, as an engineer who spent a lifetime looking for microscopic flaws in mechanical systems, I missed the most massive structural failure in my own home. I made one mistake that almost cost me absolutely everything. I trusted completely, and I stopped paying attention. I assumed that longevity equaled safety. I assumed that the person who knew me best would be the last person on earth to use that knowledge against me. Don't be like me. Don't wait until a stuck zipper on a burgundy leather bag becomes the only thing that saves your life. In my personal opinion, love isn't an excuse to be blind. You can love someone fully and still keep your eyes open. A good heart doesn't mean a careless one. You can build a life with someone, share a home, raise children, and still maintain the boundary of your own awareness. I believe God puts small signs in front of us every single day. A broken zipper, a name overheard in passing, a vanity drawer left open just an inch too far, a medication capsule that doesn't look quite right. The universe whispers its warnings before it shouts them. The question is whether we are humble enough and attentive enough to notice those whispers before it's too late. If this story made you think about the people you trust, the things you might have overlooked, or perhaps the quiet routines of your own home, I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what city or country you are joining from today, and let's see how far this story travels. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes a simple reminder to keep our eyes open is the greatest gift we can give to someone we care about. And if you'd like to follow more stories like this, subscribing means a great deal. Thank you sincerely for staying with me until the very end. A note before you go. The stories that follow contain certain fictional elements, shaped and constructed entirely for educational and reflective purposes. Names, settings, and exact details are not always drawn from a specific source, but what this story carries, the core truth of it, is something I hope stays with you. If that's not what you're looking for today, no hard feelings at all. Step away and find something that suits you better. But if you choose to stay, I promise to make it worth your while. Keep your eyes open, my friends, and always pay attention to the small things.